Okay, so this is my research questions. They were sent by Janette Hughes regarding semester 1 and 2 work at Village Union Public School with the makerspace labs. So I have the questions here. What do you perceive as the benefits of makerspace pedagogy? So in my opinion, the benefits are super vast. They're amazing from a student perspective. Even me being in the makers space setting in the fall and learning about lily pads and Arduinos and the makeys, I was inspired, and I was kind of wondering where this was 10, 15 years ago in education. I can see that students are exploring, they're discussing, they're questioning each other, they're coming up with solutions, they're using all of those just kind of observation and exploration skills that are super important in today's education. It helps them prepare for the future. It gets them in touch with the realities of technology and gets them hands-on creating and making things. They're able to make connections. So sometimes like the literature that we're presenting them with, or even things we're verbally discussing, all of a sudden then we're putting that into action and actually creating something, whether it be a poster or a button or sewing a bag together or creating some kind of light on a shirt with a message. All these things just kind of sink in with the students, and they're able to resonate more with it. So what do you perceive as the challenges of makerspace pedagogies? There's lots. There's nothing that can't be overcome. As an aspiring educator and someone who's new in this field, in this realm of new age education, there's a lot of ways to, of course, overcome the technology issues. Makerspaces doesn't have to always involve crazy technology or 3D printers or expensive components. It can just be something simple. You can have students creating with recycled material or repurposed material. Even having students lay out plans and design and kind of come up with things collaboratively and through discussion. That's kind of where the making really happens. And then applying it to even something like a picto chart, or going into an app like something that's extremely accessible through even a desktop computer. It doesn't have to be on like an expensive iPad or anything like that. So there's challenges. The tech challenges are one. The content challenge is another. A lot of what you're discussing and you're showing students, if you are engaging them in interactive technologies or things like an iPad, or even using smartboard technology with primary students, all that stuff can be just time consuming as far as laying out the management of it, how students should interact with it, the benefits of it, and then of course managing them with being with the technology or in a station with lily pads or makey, especially if there is some kind of hierarchy in question, or they're in the middle of doing some activity where they need to produce something. Sometimes the technology can become a little bit of an obstacle or can become distracting. I noticed several situations where the iPads were extremely distracting for selfies or asking Siri questions, which at the beginning, I guess I was thinking of it more as a distraction and more of a nuisance. But as I started to realize what the students were kind of asking it, in some cases it was beneficial. So there's lots of challenges. The challenges, I think, work better when you're in a collaborative setting and you start to discuss them more, because you see different people's perspectives and angles. So it's hard for me to independently come up with the challenges. Right off the bat, you think about the technology, of course, and then the content that you're trying to get through the technology, and then the management of the technology. So in a lot of cases it comes back to that, but like I said, it doesn't always have to be tech-driven makerspace. Like you don't always have to have the technology to incorporate a makerspace or to incorporate stations. You can do it through other means. So even if you have students on websites and they're using curation tools, that can still be challenging in itself, because you want to make sure that all 20 or 25 or 30 students are on task, and that they're actually going to be producing something that has some educational merit, and they're going to get something out of it. So Yeah. What did you observe / learn about addressing issues of bullying from this project? Well, we're still in the middle of it. I'm learning things every week. These are just a few students that, the issue of bullying and the reality of the students that we're working with, these students and these groupings of students, they're in all the school boards and they're in all the schools. So, it's what you're observing is basically that they know a lot, they're well informed, they're living in, an information age where, messages, information to things that are kind of out of their, it's not beyond their area of thinking, but when they start looking at, aggression in schools and violence in schools, and and you start talking about guns in schools and the kind of the bigger stuff, they're aware of it and they know it's happening, but I don't think that they're really truly grasping that the monotonous little pushing and nitpicking and comments to each other, that's where it starts and then it evolves. So they, in a lot of cases, they see the connections, and I think it's going to sink in more over this next month, but it's difficult in particular with this age group, because they're right on that edge, they're right on that bubble of really understanding how the bullying and how the constant bickering really impacts them. And I even noticed that in my practicum, because I did a grade 6 practicum where I did some digital literacy lessons. Actually, I did like whole school digital literacy lessons with the 7s and 8s also. And I noticed, there was a lot more relevance with the 7s and 8s with some things that we were speaking about. The 6s were very engaged and they wanted to know more, but they weren't able to contribute to the issues and kind of why things are happening, because they're still trying to grasp it. So not all students, some of them are right on track. They see how things are affecting, they see how their actions affect each other. I've learned a lot about just working with different kinds of students, different kinds of learners. This group at the public school that I'm working at, it's been really, really good. And it's just a wide variety of individuals. So I'm getting a good grasp of how to relate to different individuals, how to portray information, how to kind of open up my morning with them, how to get them back from a big transition, like they go out for recess and they come back and they just want to dive right back into the technology, or they want to go right back to doing what they're doing, but we might be moving on. So and every single one of these individuals is different. So it's been extremely just a unique opportunity to work with them. And and it is not much different than working with I guess what you would call like working in like a standard run-of-the-mill classroom. There is obviously differences, but I think it is all how you approach material and how you kind of approach the learning and the students. It doesn't matter if the students are of maybe just a different kind of group, or a high needs group, or a group that's maybe associated with aggression in a school or something to that degree. It's more about like just having universal kind of approach, and you should be able to work in a natural or a standard school setting or in a classroom like what we've been doing in practicum, and you should be able to work in this kind of setting, and it shouldn't really phase you. You shouldn't really have to reinvent the wheel too much. Of course you have to adjust, but the overall foundation of the instruction and how and what you want the students to get out of it should be the same. So and I guess what did you learn or observe about working with at-risk youth from this project? So I guess that just goes back to what I'm saying. I do realize that a lot of the students, in particular in this setting, are at risk, and I was aware of that from the get-go. But the more I've gotten to know these students, I start to kind of make assumptions, or I start to generalize them like any other student. They're just another grade 6 student. They're no different than any of my practicum students. Of course, there is underlining things, and there's history and whatever, but moving forward and how I am with them, I wouldn't treat them any differently. obviously I'm a little bit more reserved, and there's been situations where, you might have to step back or you might have to reapproach. But the reality is they're still a 10, 11, 12-year-old individual, and you just need to relate to them, and you need to get across to them the importance of them being with you in this moment and understanding the value of whether it's you're talking about bullying or whatever it may be. Whatever the instruction is, you need to pull them in. So have I been able to pull these individuals in the same way I've been able to pull my practicum group of 28 or 25 students in? No. This has been a lot more challenging. Is it a very similar approach? Yeah. It's very similar in the overall management of how I would manage them. Do things happen as quickly? No. Do they happen? Yeah. So I don't know. This is, again, something that I think would be better debated in a group setting, or when I'm able to kind of be probed more deeply. I think you'd be able to get more out of me. So I'd appreciate deeper questions regarding that process, or even sitting down and talking to you guys, and you could just record something if you needed anything more. So anyway, I hope this is enough. And I just realized I rambled for 10 minutes, so I apologize. I hope this was useful. Thanks. I just figured a video format was better, or an audio format. I've typed so much this week, and I meant to do this Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and I didn't. So I've just had my breakfast and my coffee, and I spit it all out to you, Janette. So I hope it's okay. Thanks.